Whenever a movie's ready to turn over, we'll sit, effects side and dialogue side, we'll sit with the director, producer, writer, post-super, picture editor, any number of people or any small number of people. Sometimes it's just a director, sometimes it's just a post-supervisor, depending on the project, depending on our relationship with them already. If we've done 4 or 5 movies in a row, then we kind of know exactly what to do, and they trust us. Generally, though, we'll sit with the clients and hit play, and they'll say, here we want, we don't see a car drive by, but we need one to help the story. And so then it's the same thing with the dialogue in ADR. They'll say, now this was a bad shoot. We know the audio is terrible. We want to double check on that. Or they'll say, here there's a little bit of a lull in the conversation, so we want to add a couple lines. Or they'll say, for the opening, we want this VO. There's going to be VO here, or this VO that's already in there, we're going to use, or we've recorded some temp lines. So stuff like that is quite obvious of what needs to be re-recorded. And generally, the clients will give you a list of, stuff that they definitely want to record after the fact. Sometimes they have that ready, sometimes they don't. Then after that, it's up to me to take, look at the OMF, which is what the picture editor and the director have compiled of production dialogue to match the video and their temp effects and stuff. And so the OMF, generally for size, is a comp of all the production tracks mixed into one. So that's when we would want a full dialogue load, which again, in the past, we'd use the DAT just to pull that off. Now there's a program we use called Titan, which uses an EDL, the edit decision list, which has all of the production dialogue, and then the source of where it goes on the timeline in their Avid or Final Cut Pro, which then also equates into our Pro Tools timeline. And Titan basically takes the EDL and says, here's your source, or here's your production dialogue, and here's where it needs to go on the timeline. And then it loads all your channels up for you. So then that's a lot easier and better for us to say, okay, the OMF, yeah, scrap that, we'll use the dialogue load. And then you can get your individual lav tracks out, your boom tracks out and everything. So then it's just a matter of going through and fine-tuning and saying, okay, this is good or this is bad due to many different things. Sometimes on set, they'll record a line, but then when you're going back through it and cutting, they'll say, well, if they would have just said this word differently at the end, so then they pull that from a different take and do like what we call like a Frankenbite situation. So we would want to ADR that for fluidity. If there's heavy background noise, maybe just the actual noise of like the air conditioner or the windows open, or there's a clunk, something happens off screen that's not happening on picture, which doesn't make any sense. I forget what the term is with the gun, where you see the gun early on in the movie, but then it never is seen again. So it's kind of the same thing. So you would want to ADR over that because those noises don't mean anything. Then, giving them the list of here's what we would do, perfect rule technical reasons, and generally we get back, do we need to do these? We've only got, 4 hours in the budget. It's, well, depends, so that's the other thing too, when you're queuing the ADR, if there's music, you definitely want to talk with the clients, like, okay, you've put temp music in, is this music cue still going to stay? Is it going to be this present? That definitely helps cover up some of the stuff that you wouldn't need to do ADR for. ADR, it's evil necessity in the fact that obviously you want to try to keep production as much as possible. That's where you got the actual raw, real performance. But it's, unfortunate with what's happening these, past 10 years is, at least on some of the lower budget projects, is sounds kind of become secondary. Like, did you hire a sound guy? Yeah. Did he record it? Yeah. All right, great. That's it. As opposed to, having them say, okay, that take was great. There was a giant plane going through it. Or, and especially, we've had movies that, 3-week shoot and then a month edit. So, it can be really quick paced. Some movies, have 6-month edit, which is good and great. Then we have a little bit more time to get into the dialogue, cut it, and see what we actually need for ADR. 99% of the time after the spotting sessions, first question is from the clients, so when can we get an ADR list? It's like, well, let me get in there. You know, it's going to take a couple days. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. You know, like I say, just it's unfortunate just that the sound is kind of the last step on the chain of the process, and so we definitely have to pick up a lot of the pieces sound-wise. And so generally, a lot of people are very, you know, like, wow, that's a lot of ADR. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but you know, we did a movie where the sound mixer had a 4-channel recorder on set, and he took everybody's microphone and bounced them into one channel. And they were completely surprised about how much ADR we had to do. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but one actor's talking, standing still, another actor's moving around, and all of their law of sound is now on the channel of the guy talking, which we can't separate. So that's why definitely for any future filmmakers out there, it's, you know, take some time, get a sound guy that you know is good, and if you're happy and you go into the post process and your audio post team is like, wow, that's pretty good production dialogue, then go back to that sound guy and keep him. Get him in your pocket, you know, keep him. Definitely tell him that it was good, and you know, try. Obviously, each shoot's a little bit different as far as resources and availability and everything, but that's definitely, you know, you got a good cinematographer you want to try to keep, you got a good AD you want to try to keep, you know, producer, everything, and it should be the same thing with the sound. But unfortunately, it's, you know, not what it was. You know, being told from the people that did like the original Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, that during that time, you know, the budget was a lot bigger, and the post-audio team was able to go out and kind of location scout with them and say, okay, this is going to be great, or, you know, this could be a potential problem. Let's try to, you know, fix this and stuff. Whereas, like I say now, movie we did last year, filmed in September, and was ready for distribution potential in December. So yeah, pretty quick turnaround. So that's why you definitely got to be, you know, on your game, and as far as, you know, not giving clients ADR lists that are too much. You know, so that's like so be an ADR editor and mixer. Definitely, you want to try to have a dialogue background first. You know, and you should be part of that process too, from start to finish. Sometimes we have to give, you know, outside ADR mixers, you know, like just for availability, you know, like, hey, we need you to come in and shoot some ADR. But if they're coming in blind, they don't really have much to tell the clients as far as, you know, well, why are we shooting this line again? It's like, well, I don't know. It says here, noisy. So it's definitely good to keep, you know, for me, process start to finish, dialogue all the way through to ADR, and then cutting, you know, and then even competent in with the dialogue. Well, that's what's kind of complicated about the terminology for the post-audio side, is that, you know, ADR means different things: automatic dialogue replacement, additional dialogue replacement, you know, the MOS thing, mid-out sound, yada yada. So ADR, when they say ADR mixer, it doesn't quite mean the same thing that it does, because you're recording. You're not really mixing. Technically, yeah, you're mixing the dialogue in the ADR while you're recording, but it's not like a traditional mix that students and people now think of, where you're actually mixing the music and the dialogue and the effects and stuff. So to keep on that, the assistant is technically called the ADR recordist, because they're the one that actually is kind of hitting the machine, while the ADR mixers kind of, you know, getting the mic set up, getting the cues ready. When I started 10 years ago, I was doing ADR recordist, and what I was doing was recording the DAT tapes, the DAT tape backups, and marking, you know, takes, and, you know, okay, take 3, they kind of like, take 4, partial, take 5, no good. So as far as actually mixing, I have mixed some TV shows, some of the reality shows that we've done, which are basically easy. You know, music. Is the music loud? Yep. All right, great, we're done. But as far as like actual technically mixing, generally no. When you comp, you'll do sort of a pre-dub, to help the mixer, you'll want to balance, the ADR, like, okay, the dialogue edit, they brought, this bit down -6. Now, is the ADR at 0? Is it too loud? Yeah, so let's bring that down a little bit. And then also, too, when you replace production dialogue with ADR, obviously you'll mute the production ADR, but there's going to be that hole. So you want to find some background fill from production, pop that in there, and balance that out a little bit. So there is some mixing involved, but again, it's more of a pre-dub situation. So that's the other thing too with any potential filmmakers that might be watching, or any sound, anything. Definitely what helps on the post side is you record generally on every set that you're at, every location. At the end of the shoot or before the shoot, you'll do room tone. You record a minute or two of room tone, which then should show up on the sound reports at the end, with the WL, wild lines, or just room tone, so that we can pull that out and bam, have just a minute of clean of that ambience, of that room tone, of that background of the nature, so we can put in so that it'll match really well. We do definitely do background pass on the effects side, which definitely helps, but the dialogue always, generally in any movie, is what's front and what's popping. So you definitely need that tone, the actual background production tone, to help go through. For me, watching movies hasn't been ruined, but the movies that I've come to enjoy the most are the ones that I don't think about the editorial process, because it's very smooth and very fluid. And then so it's definitely, sometimes they'll be like, oh my God, that's ADR, or you'll hear that balance not quite, and so you're thinking like, no, if they just would have done this, So that's kind of what takes it out for me. But again, the movies that I don't think about are the ones that I definitely appreciate more. What we do, though, is since all the editors are in one building, when it does go to a mix, we're all on like iChat. So the mixer can say, hey, at this time code, can I get a swap for this effect? Then boom, the effects editors are on it, send it back over, not a problem. So that's essentially the same thing that would happen on the stage, just, kind of remote. And that's definitely what technology has definitely helped us out with that. Because, for a company like us, we definitely have to keep going, keep working. And so generally when a movie is mixing, we're in the process of cutting another movie. And so that's the thing, that's what I would say, like, we're in iChat, get a note from the stage, boom, easy fix. Now, there's definitely movies that I know of, the bigger budget movies that are mixed, on the big stages, excuse me, they'll do like a week of just ADR mixing. Then they'll do a week of like just balancing music. Then they'll do a week, just going through Foley and stuff. So on something like that, it definitely would be advantageous to have the ADR mixer there, going through the cue sheets, you're just making sure, okay, these two, the select and the alt that we have in there don't work. Let's go through, take 5 or take 7 might work, pop those in, kind of see, or even, if you're dealing with, A-list celebrities, even some of that times too, you might be like, oh, we'll just bring them in for another half day of ADR. Whereas, we don't always have that luxury. It's definitely, again, it's become so fast-paced that the perfect world scenario is definitely not happening. But that's why I say, like, you definitely have to be, on your game the whole time, and know that, your speed isn't going to impede the quality, that they can go hand in hand, and you got to find that right balance. More advice for the post side is, the biggest thing is to know the budget. A place like us, a lot of our interns and everything, they cut their teeth on the short films, and we definitely are a friend to the student, definitely a friend to the short film people and stuff. But they seem to not know their budget as well as people that have been doing it for a few years. And I guess that might be just come from the whole learning process and everything, but the quicker you know that right now, the easier everything will be. Because a situation where, we might put a bid in for a couple $1,000s, because, 10, 20-minute movie, and then we end up doing a full day of ADR, or like a week of Foley, which that gets expensive. And it's because with the student films, they're not yet making movies to feed themselves. They're still in school. That's their life right now, and we totally understand. And hey, make the best thing that you can make. Go for it and stuff. But this is what's happening now. Is shoots are quicker for budget. Budget really. Unfortunately, no one likes to talk about money, but that's really very important. Very, very important. And I guess I the other thing too to think about is putting in the actors' contracts for some ADR time. Definitely putting in there that, okay, this will be a 2-week shoot, a day of ADR, that might happen. So at least they're aware. So it's not coming out of nowhere, or now we got to scramble to get $200 to pay them extra, stuff like that. So really the biggest thing is budget, because there's so much for the post-side color correcting, all your offline stuff, everything, just the editorial process, which we definitely see a lot of kids that are editing their own movies, which is good and helpful, and that helps. But again, just kind of the budget thing is kind of the biggest, and just knowing the time, and we always say, like, if there's any questions, please ask us. For the ADR, we tell them average about 10 lines an hour. That way because that's the other thing too that everybody forgets, is that you're counting on the actors being on time, which generally never happens. You've probably never seen these actors since the shoot, which could be a couple months. So there's always the, hey, how you been doing? Let's have a cup of coffee and talk and stuff. Then boom, you've already cut into the first 20 half hour of your first hour. Half hour into the first, that's kind of extreme, but it's definitely happened. So then you got to try to pick it up and everything. And so that's why, like me as an ADR mixer, I try to get as best relationship with the client beforehand, so that I can tell them, okay, take 4 was awesome. It was in sync, it matched production really well, so that way we're not into 20, 30 take territory when we've got it in the first few. But that's, again, too, being confident in knowing what will work as an editor and as a mixer, and how to say those things to the client. Because sometimes they won't acknowledge, like, yeah, okay, great, well, we're just going to do a few more if you don't mind. So then you got to sit back and everything. But because too, a lot of the student film, with the feature films or TV shows, anything non-student, there's a post supervisor 99% of the time that is watching the money and will come into the studio and be like, how many more lines we got? Stuff like that. They're definitely kind of the, on it as far as the budget. Whereas the student films, usually we see like a producer that has, some money involved in it. But again, they're not concerned about time and stuff. So I would just say, definitely managing the time, being aware of the budget limitations, and getting the best out of that. And just sitting with us and saying, here's what I've got, what can we do? If you pay us $1, if you pay us $1 million, we're going to give you the top notch. We're definitely going to give you the best quality. It's just a matter of how much time we can do it in. is again, the pyramid thing, fast, quick, I forget the whole thing. It's fast, cheap, and good.
Yeah.
Yeah.